What does a myHill cycling bike care service involve? Well, in this video, I'm going to record the servicing of a bike. So if you bring your pride and joy to me, you'll be able to see exactly what happens. All right, so let's get started. So this is the bike that we're going to be working on today. Quite a typical servicing job. I've got here a Cube mountain bike. Clearly it's seen better days, but it's been sat in a garage for a few years, and the owner has decided that they want to get it back up to scratch with the intention of selling it. So you can see I've had a little check already, so I've got a bit of an idea of what needs to be done. So I've carried out some essential checks, including checking the chain for wear, and actually the chain's okay, so that's okay to keep on there. We'll just need to clean. The cassette was missing some sprockets, so we need to replace that. Brake cables, they get replaced as part of the service, so any bike that comes to me either has the brake cables changed or a brake bleed if it's a hydraulic braked bike. We're also going to go in for some new tyres as well. If I come around to the back tyre, you can see here we've got these telltale marks, these yellow markings here, which tells us that this tyre is worn and it needs to be replaced. The tread on the front tyre is okay, but on closer inspection of the sidewalls I can tell that that too needs to be changed as well. And then apart from that, we're also going to change the brake pads or the brake blocks on here, and these brakes as well, the owner did think they needed replacing. As you can see, there's no spring in them whatsoever, but actually all that's missing is the little adjuster screws at the bottom there. So I tested it first. I took the adjuster screws off the back brake, put them on the front to make sure that solved the problem, and it did. So I've simply bought some new adjuster screws there, saving the customer a little bit of money, as we don't need to replace the entire brakes. So over here we've got all the spare bits that we need. We've got our tyres, cables, we've got our brake pads, cassette, and our adjuster screws. And over here we've got our toolbox, our tool chest all ready and waiting to go. So the first stage is to strip everything off that we don't need, get the wheels out and so on, so we can give the bike a really good thorough degrease and clean down. All right, so let's go. Okay, so I've removed everything from the bike. That's obviously going to be replaced, plus some other bits and pieces as well, just to make the whole cleaning down and servicing process easier. I've decided that I am going to change the gear cables. They're showing evidence of a bit of rust on there and so on and so forth. These are just sort of standard galvanized cables, and I always replace cables with stainless steel, so we won't get that problem again. Plus it will give better performance. So we'll be putting in stainless steel gear cables and stainless steel brake cables. I'm not going to remove these just yet though, because to take these out I need to remove these covers, and I don't want to take those covers off during the cleaning process, so they're going to stay in for now. Obviously we've taken out the brake pads. All right, so they're all ready to go now as well. Down at the back here I have removed the rear mech, firstly to make it a bit easier to clean it up, but there is also another reason why I've done that, and I'll be come to that in a little while. And when we come down to the crankset here, I've removed that again. It will help with the cleaning process. As you can see, it's a bit of a mess. It's really hard to get to that with it attached to the bike, so I've taken it off. But also as well, doing that means that I can just properly inspect the condition of the bottom bracket, and that is absolutely fine, as I'd expect from a Shimano bottom bracket. You know, a lot of the cheaper end Shimano stuff is a little bit cheap and cheerful, to be honest, but the bottom brackets, Shimano bottom brackets, are just absolutely spot on. They're absolutely bomb proof, and they just go on forever. I can also as well just check the condition of the headset. As you can see, that's all good. So yeah, so just taking the bike apart a little bit means that I can just check out some other bits and pieces to see whether or not any other work needs doing. Obviously we've got our wheels down here. They're now all ready to be cleaned up. and all the parts that belong to the bike now are all laid out. So these are the bits we're going to clean up, put back on, and obviously these are our new bits that we'll be adding. Right, so I'm now going to degrease and clean her up. Okay, well hopefully you can tell the difference. The bike's had its wash and clean, and it's now looking much better situation. There's still a couple of things I'm not sort of too happy with. The forks, straight after the wash, they still had a lot of muck on them, so I needed to take a bit of polishing compound to them. These matte white forks might look absolutely lovely, but they are a nightmare to clean. The muck really does stick to them. Same with all these little features down here. Matte paintwork is really is a bit of a nightmare, if I'm honest, but there we go. It takes a bit more work. I ended up taking off the front derailleur to clean that up. There was just too many nooks and crannies in there to get that clean. But talking of nooks and crannies, then these little things, cotton buds, are your best friends. So I want to get in here just to clean these little parts that drop out. So I just get my cotton bud in there like that, and that will then clean up quite nicely. And what I'll do is, as I'm building the bike up, if I do notice a part of the bike I haven't quite cleaned properly or needs a little bit more attention, then I will then deal with that at that point. Sometimes you don't really notice it until you're up close with the bike and and putting it back together. I've started already though, putting the bike back together. So we've got our new cables in. Replace those galvanized cables with these Shimano stainless steel cables. Stainless steel maybe about £2 more than maybe galvanized, but they are so much worth the money. They give much better performance both in braking and in gear changes, and of course they are much more corrosive resistance as well. And while I'm up here as well, what I tend to do is, as I'm putting the bike back together, I'll be checking all the threads and checking the situation with the grease and so on and so forth. So these little brake adjusters here, I'll pop a bit of grease on them while I'm here, and I'll be continuing to do that as I build the bike up. Okay, but before I do that, before I actually get onto the bike build, I need to carry out a few essential checks, and that's what I'm going to show you next. So one of the most important essential checks that we do when we put a bike back together, as part of my service, is to check to make sure this hanger here is straight. And to do that, we need this tool. It's called a hanger alignment gauge, aka a HAG. And how this works is that just screws into the derailleur hanger, and you choose a spot on the wheel, and the most obvious spot is the valve hole. And so I'm just going to put that down to the bottom of the bike like that, and then all I do is just put the gauge up to the wheel until it touches like that, and just tying that on. Okay, and if the wheel is if the gear hanger is straight, then when I bring the wheel up to the top, the gauge should touch the wheel. But as you can see, we've got about a centimetre gap there. That's actually not too bad. I've seen wheels where the gauge is right back here somewhere. Alright, so all we do is we just give that a gentle push. You want to close the gap to about halfway. That might be there, so I'll just check that. So I'll just come back down the bottom again. Alright, so let's just move the camera so you can see what's going on. There we go. So just going to move the gauge again. Alright, so that's now touching. Bring it back up to the top, and there you go. That's touching on there as well. Alright, I'll then do a check this way, and can you see the gauge is overlapping the rim there? So again, I just need to just tweak that back a little bit, like so. Alright, I'll now check that on its opposite side on here, and there we go. So on this bike, we are changed the tyres, so obviously I had to take the old tyres off. But I would do that anyway, even if I'm not going to be changing the tyres on a bike. Because one thing I do want to check is, I want to check the rim tape. This isn't something that really wears out, but it can move, and you can get the spoke ends, or the spoke holes, should I say, exposed, which can then lead to punctures. As you can see, this rim tape is in pretty good shape. It's a little bit out of line in a couple of places, but that's absolutely fine. And I've just checked the front wheel as well, and that's absolutely fine too. But one of the other cool things about having the tyres off is, if you're dealing with rim brakes, it means that you can, and I've just obviously put this, I've obviously just put this block in. It means that you can really get the blocks in absolutely the right place, because when it lands on the rim, you don't want it coming over top of the rim here, because what will happen is eventually it will start to touch the tyre, and that will lead to punctures. So we've got all the pads on now, front and rear, so they're all nicely lined up. We come around to the front. I've added in the adjuster screws. So first of all, we do have some nice springy working brakes, and again I've lined those up so they sit just below the top of the rim. I might make some more changes in a little while once I've actually got the brakes cabled up. As you can see, there are some gaps there, so maybe the alignment of the pads can be improved, but I need there to be sort of tension in the cable. So what I'll do, I'll cable them up and compress the brakes, all right, and then we can then make some just micro adjustments to those pads. But before I do that, I need to prepare the cables. Now, I've said all along that I have been using stainless steel cables, which are super slippery, but we can still make them slightly better. So before I install a cable, I get my silicone lubricant here, okay, and in the rag like that, and then we just nicely lubricate all of that cable there. All right, and that will work really well now inside the housing. And I'll do that with all the cables, so we get the best performance in terms of gears and brakes. Obviously I made a little bit of a mess there, so we'll do another little bit of a clean up, but actually I'll do a final clean up once the bike's all together, because you inevitably get bits of oil and grease and so on and so forth. Talking of oil and grease, I've put a bit of lube in there just to make those nice and springy. I put grease on the back of the bolts, and obviously plenty of grease in the adjuster screws, because we don't want those to be seizing up. Okay, so listen, I'll get these cabled up, and then we'll then be getting on to looking at the drive chain. Okay, so we've got the brakes cabled up, and really happy with how that's performing. Got it working quite nicely close to the rim there. Nice sharp braking. These new adjuster screws are working really well. Just to explain that, what I said earlier on about getting the pads really aligned with the rim. So in here you've got these sort of self-aligning washers. Got like two cones that work inside each other. And so what we do is we just hold the brake on really hard. You can see that got the brake on, yeah, and then just loosen off the Allen key there a little bit. It's nice and loose there. And what will happen is, if there was any misalignment, that brake pad would now be aligned up nicely against the rim. So what we do is you tighten it back on again. Don't over tighten it. You don't need to be the Incredible Hulk on here. But yeah, just you've got a good bite on it. And there we go. Nice test. And I can sort of see from above, and this is another advantage of taking the tyres off while I'm doing this. I can really see down by the blocks to see whether or not there's any gaps between the block and the rim. But you can see that's all good. So happy with that. On the back brake, I picked up a little bit of a wobble in the rim there, so I just took the opportunity to just to straighten that rim up as well. As you can see, we've got a nice working brake there. Okay, Here we go, nice and snappy. So all I've got to do now is just crimp these cables, and then that's all the braking done. So next up is we'll get the tyres on, and then we'll get cracking with the drive chain. Okay, we've got the rear tyre in, and it has to be said there's nothing quite like new tyres to really make a bike look special again. Also put the cassette in as well, and just to sort of emphasize something here, I've used a genuine Shimano cassette in there, the same as I've also used genuine Shimano brake pads as well. Okay, I will always use genuine parts in any servicing that I do. Okay, because you just can't compromise on quality, certainly when it comes to things like brakes. Now, before I put the front tyre in, just want to point a couple of things out. First of all, because tyres are something that, you know, a lot of you will do yourself, so there's a couple of things you want to point out. Tyres nowadays often come with an arrow to show you which way around they should put on. So if this tyre is going to be on the front, so therefore it needs to rotate around that way. If it was on the rear, then the tyre would be put the other way around. So just be aware that when you put new tyres on, just check to see whether or not there is a rotational arrow on the side. There usually is. And then one thing I always do as well is, before I put an inner tube in, is I put a generous amount of talcum powder in the tyre or on the inner tube. It just helps the insulation process, and also as well it just stops or prevents the inner tube from sticking to the inside of the tyre. Okay, so we're in the home straight now. As you can see, we've now got the drive chain all back on, chain set been screwed back on, all good. Got the rear mech back together again, that's all back on. Okay, should obviously be all nice and straight now. Now we've sorted out this gear hanger, so we should all be good. Next up is I'll be degreasing the chain to clean that up, and then we'll just be setting up and cabling in the two derailleurs and testing the gears, and obviously finally just getting the saddle back in there. Just a very quick thing, obviously on this bike I've replaced the cassette, but if the cassette hadn't needed changing, then what I would have simply have done is I would have removed it and I would have degreased it all. Alright, so remember, the only thing that comes as part of the service in terms of new componentry is new brake cables or a brake bleed, and everything else would be extra. Okay, so we're in the final straight now. Got derailleurs on, I've set them all up, all working perfectly. And now all I've got to do now is really just check the bits of the bike which I haven't looked at so far. You know, the reason I haven't looked at them is because, you know, they didn't need, nothing needed changing and so on, but we still need to check those bits and pieces. So what I'll be doing now is going around with my trusty torque wrench and just making sure that things like these handlebar bolts are all at the correct setting. I've also as well previously just checked the threads, and where necessary add a bit of extra grease, and I'll be going around and just doing a final check on the bike. And other than a test ride, that's pretty much about it. I will go around with find whether it's just a clean rag, just to make sure that, you know, I've not got any dirty fingerprints on it. As you can see, obviously I put the saddle back in, I cleaned all this up, re-greased that and so on and so forth. Right, that's it, all done. Been out for a test ride, everything's good. Did one or two final checks, like just checking to make sure that the pedals were correctly torqued and so on and so forth. Final little clean over, but that's it. The bike is now ready to go back to its customer. Okay, hope you enjoyed watching this. I hope it sort of gave you a bit of an idea of what I do when I service a bike, and obviously if you'd like your bike servicing, then use the details below to get in touch. Also, please give me a bit of feedback on the video. I'd really appreciate that. I'm sure you can tell this is the first one I've done of these, so any feedback would be greatly appreciated. I'm sure I've missed out a few bits and pieces, a few stages in terms of the service, but I think you generally get the idea. As I said, full details are on my website, which is on the link below. I will be doing a few more of these in future, So keep coming back to my channel, subscribe to my channel, and you'll never miss a video. Okay, thank you.